So I'm gonna just let you guys let me know when you want to start, and I will share after Ramiro does the introductions, if that's okay with everyone.
Shall we start? Sure. What do you think?
Yeah, we can start.
Yeah. So Ramiro, over to you, right?
Okay. So everybody, welcome to MIHRA's Inaugural Journal Club. Please feel free to type your name and where are you logging from in the chat, or as I did here in my name, so everyone gets to see. We are here in a very international cohort right now. So some housekeeping notes before we get started. This session will be recorded, so mind your language. And we anticipate it will be a lot of discussion, so please feel free to join into the discussion. We want to remind everyone that MIHRA Journal Club is considered a highly interactive activity, so please interact. And that MIHRA membership underscores a commitment from all of us to the value of equitable visibility and voice for all of the participants. Today, MIHRA Journal Club will be reviewing a lot of different angles in relation to clinical trials and therapeutic pathways in IBM. And today's article will be Safety and Efficacy of Arimoclomol in Inclusion Body Myositis, also known as IBM to its friends. My name is Ramiro Gomez. I'm a rheumatologist from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm really pleased to be here as the moderator of this session. We are joined today by two esteemed patient partners who will be discussants and provide clinical insights from a patient's perspectives, Marie-Christine Breeveld and Joseph Sanchez. Please, Marie-Christine, Joseph, introduce yourselves. You are in mute, Marie-Christine.
Ladies first.
I'm an IBM patient. Was diagnosed with ALS in the end of 2017, and re-diagnosed in 2018, end of 2018 with IBM. I'm a relatively slow patient. I'm still walking. And I'm chair of the Dutch Foundation of the Muscle Disease IBM.
I am Joseph Sanchez from Arlington, Texas. I am an IBM patient. I was diagnosed in October 2013. My doctor actually thought I had poly, but the biopsy came back as IBM. I went and my wife thought I had ALS. We had a third opinion done, and both came back IBM. And then I became I took up the sport of table tennis in 2016, 3 years after I got IBM, became a para athlete with table tennis for the US, and got to introduce myositis to the para world. But with that said, I'm known as Myositis Joe in Dallas, and in the USA, on social media, on Facebook, and many call me an influencer because I'm actually more mobile and functional today than I was when I got diagnosed in 2013.
Thank you very much, Marie-Christine, Joe. So today's article will be presented by Suur Biliciler. Suur, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm really happy and honored to be here. My name is Suur Biliciler, and you pronounced it really great. Yes. And I am a neuromuscular specialist at UT Houston. And my interests are in myositis and myopathies.
Thank you very much, Suur. And following Suur's presentation, she will join Pedro Machado, along with Marie-Christine and Joe, in a discussion. So please, Pedro, introduce yourself. And notice I said Machado and not Machado.
Well done, well done. So Pedro Machado, I'm a rheumatologist with a neuromuscular subspecialty, and I work at University College in London, and I've got a research and clinical interest in the idiopathic inflammatory myopathies, particularly inclusion body myositis, and for the past 15 years, I've been doing research in inclusion body myositis. So it's a great pleasure to be here today. And I was one of the leaders of the paper being discussed today, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Thank you very much, Pedro. So without further preamble, Suur, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Today, we're going to be discussing, as Ramiro said, the safety and efficacy of Arimoclomol for inclusion body myositis, which is a multi-center randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. And we have the privilege to have the lead author join with us and share his experiences. Next, please. Let's talk about the background of the study. So IBM is the most common progressive muscle wasting or inflammatory muscle disease in individuals over the age of 50. It's characterized by insidious asymmetrical weakness. And as the disease progresses, we see the quadriceps muscles and the finger flexors getting involved much more predominantly. And a good number of patients also, they either present with dysphagia or develop dysphagia over the course of the disease. And there is no effective drug treatment to date, and hence the need for studies. And the treatment intervention in the study is with Arimoclomol. So what is Arimoclomol, and why did the authors choose Arimoclomol as the intervention therapy? So Arimoclomol is an oral co-inducer of the heat shock response, and heat shock response or heat shock proteins are important because they enhance, they actually help refold or misfolded proteins. And in inclusion body myositis, the pathology shows that misfolding of proteins is actually very important. So Arimoclomol enhances the expression of the heat shock proteins. So this leads to help refold damaged or misfolded proteins that we see in IBM pathology. And also, there was a prior pilot study in IBM, which showed that Arimoclomol was safe and tolerable. And also, there were in vitro studies which showed, and also animal studies which showed that the medication helped alleviate some of the pathological findings of IBM. Next, please. And let's talk about the rationale and objective a little bit. So what is the rationale of this study? So IBM pathogenesis, as we all know, is very complicated. It has both degenerative and inflammatory components. There is, as we just talked about, there is protein misfolding and aggregation problems. And the heat shock proteins already upregulated in IBM may reduce toxic aggregates. And as we again discussed, there is positive preclinical data showing that there are reduced pathological markers in IBM-like models with the help of Arimoclomol and possibly upregulation of heat shock proteins. The study objective is to, or was to assess the safety, tolerability, and efficacy of Arimoclomol. And the dose of Arimoclomol was 1,200 milligram per day in patients with IBM. Next, please. Study design. So this is actually a very, very robust study. The design is very robust. It's a multi-center study. It's a randomized one-to-one randomized double-blind and placebo-controlled study. And the locations are actually multi-continental. There were 11 centers in the USA and 1 center in the UK. The enrollment period covered from 2017 to 2019, almost over 2 years. And the study duration was about 20 months treatment. Next, please. Key inclusion and exclusion criteria in the study. Of course, these are very important criteria, and we can discuss later if this can be improved or this criteria can be mimicked for further trials in IBM. The key inclusion criteria, the patients who over the age of 45 and with the onset of weakness after 45 were included. And these patients needed to fulfill the diagnostic criteria of IBM based on the ENMC 2011 criteria. And the patients also were required to have the ability to rise from a chair and walk at least 6 meters with or without device. Exclusion criteria included high-dose corticosteroids or other immunosuppressive treatments within the last 3 months, and any other serious medical conditions if the patients had that would preclude them from enrolling in the study. These patients were excluded. The randomization was done placebo versus the intervention arm were done in a 1-to-1 ratio. Arimoclomol was given for 400 milligrams 3 times a day as a total dose of 1,200 milligrams per day. The randomization was achieved by a central computer-generated sequence. Next, please. Treatment protocol, as we learned, oral arimoclomol was given 400 milligrams 3 times a day versus placebo capsules. Of course, the capsules, the appearance matched with the intervention arm, and the total daily dose was 1,200 milligrams per day. Those modifications were actually allowed if, let's say, some or intolerable side effects occurred. Up to a 4-week interruption was allowed. And when the medication was given or the dose was rechallenged, if the patients could not tolerate, then for the rest of the trial, the dose could be reduced by half. And the assessments were done monthly or bi-monthly in person. Of course, COVID hit at some point during the study. At that point, remote check-ins or phone calls were allowed. And the treatment period was 20 months, and there was a safety follow-up at the mark of 21st month. Primary endpoints were changed from baseline in the Inclusion Body Myositis Functional Rating Scale, again, from baseline to month 20. And IBM FRS includes 10 items, 1 item per swallowing, 3 items for upper limb function, 3 items for activities of daily living, and 3 items for leg function. The secondary endpoints was hand grip strength, modified timed up and go, manual muscle testing, 6-minute walk test, and a questionnaire, SF36, that we usually use in clinical trials. The physical component of this questionnaire was included as a secondary endpoint. Other secondary measures were knee extensor strength, 2-minute walk test, and some other questionnaires. Can we move to the next slides? Here we're looking at the baseline characteristics. As you can see, the baseline characteristics of both the arimoclomol and the placebo arm were very similar. There were 150 patients included in full. 73 of those patients were in the arimoclomol arm, and 77 of those patients were in the placebo arm. The mean age of the patients was about 67 years. And as you can see in the arimoclomol and placebo arm, they're very, very similar. The male patients were actually was the most dominant sex, but again, it was similar in both arms. Mean IBM FRS, as you can see, was also very similar. And the disease duration, so the patients, when they were enrolled in the study, most of them has had the disease for about 8 years. So again, as you can appreciate in the slide, the groups were very well balanced at baseline. We can move on to the next slide. And what about this, the results? Let's talk about the results a little bit. So at the end of the study, the primary endpoint results were evaluated, and our primary endpoint result, as we remember, was the IBM FRS total score change from baseline to month 20. As you can see here, the blue line is the placebo arm, and the purple line is the arimoclomol arm. As you can see, there was actually a progression, worsening of the disease, and the numbers worsened, but the lines are very close to each other. So there was no significant difference in between placebo and treatment arms. Next, please. So secondary endpoints, here it's a little bit busier than the other slide, and it's a little bit smaller, the graphs. I hope you can see these. So here we're looking at the secondary endpoints, the hand grip strength, timed up on go, manual muscle strength here, and 6-minute walk test in E, and the SF36 physical component. And as you can see here, it's very similar to the other, or our primary endpoint graph, which shows that in both the treatment and the placebo arm, patients showed decline, but the decline was very similar in both arms. Next, please. What we learned about the safety and the tolerability of this of arimoclomol was that it was overall a safe drug. There were, of course, some adverse events, and adverse events were a little bit more in the arimoclomol arm, if the adverse events were mild or moderate in severity. Serious adverse events were actually less frequent in the arimoclomol arm, and was seen more in the placebo arm. There was one death in the arimoclomol group. The patient had cholangiocarcinoma and had metastases, so had terminal cancer. And the investigators decided that this was unrelated to the study. There was another death in the placebo group. The patient passed in their sleep and was off any type of treatment, so the cause was actually recorded as unknown. The lab abnormalities were somewhat more in the arimoclomol arm. The liver enzymes, ALT and AST, were about 3 times of normal in the treatment group. And there was one case of tubulointerstitial nephritis in the arimoclomol group. But as I said, the adverse events were not very serious, and overall, the drug was safe and tolerable. Next, please. So conclusions. What did we learn from the study? What were the conclusions? So at the end of the study, there was no, the conclusion was there was no efficacy benefit of arimoclomol. The drug in 1200 milligrams per day did not slow functional decline. And the decline was present in both the intervention and the placebo arm, and the numbers were very similar. Safety profile, although there was a slightly higher incidence of mild to moderate adverse events in the arimoclomol group, the safety profile was generally acceptable. And what did we learn from the study? So IBM still remains without an approved disease-modifying drug. So we still need alternatives. We still need treatments. We still need research in this area. Maybe in future, alternative or combination therapies can be achieved rather than focusing on one arm, such as the degenerative arm in this trial. Maybe we can have an intervention, or maybe we can have two drugs, one working for the degenerative, one working for the inflammatory arm. But we still learned very useful information from the study, because the study actually provided us a long-term data, progression data, natural course data in our IBM patients. And the decline in the placebo arm in IBM FRS was about 2 to 3 points over 20 months in placebo group. So we can use this information when we are designing or when we are thinking about future trials. Next, please. And future directions. Again, there is an unmet need in IBM. There are ongoing trials exploring other pathways, sirolimus and KLRG positive T-cell depletion studies, which is looking into the depletion of highly differentiated T-cells. And clinical trial design. How do we design future studies? Could we have done something better, or could we have used another endpoint, which we're going to discuss in a little bit? Which brings us to the point that it is very important selecting our outcomes. And again, the need to target multiple pathways, because IBM is a complex disease. So I will conclude here. And
great. Thank you very much. Sure, that was very, very interesting. So now for the discussion, please feel free to join in the discussion, all the attendees. And Mary Christie, Joe, I'm gonna be mean and put you on the spot first, for I would like to know your insights as IBM patients.
It's mean indeed. I'm a patient. I was a paramedic a long time ago. I'm not a doctor. I heard from this study from Leslie Ann just, I think 1.5 weeks ago. It's hard to figure out what it actually says. My first reaction was, this is the biggest study worldwide in IBM, and it's only 150 patients. So it brings reality to you. And I have, we discussed yesterday shortly about the inclusion terms for the study. Swallowing is one of the big problems, and that if you start a research project as this, be aware of the size of the tablets, because you can include more patients possible if you can make the tablet smaller in any way with all the rules there are. And one of the things I saw in the study that the average time of diagnosis in the patients was 8 years. I was surprised because that means that the patients are older and that you maybe missed out on the younger group. Why is that? And it also says somewhere that if there were maybe more younger patients included, that the results were maybe different. So those were the most important things I took out of reading everything. And well, this is my first reaction.
Thank you very much, Marie-Christy. Joe?
My first reaction was I'm sad to see that it didn't perform the way everybody hoped, but I think a larger group reaching out to people. There was a lot of people with IBM that didn't join the study because it's either that they can't drive, or they didn't have the way to get there, or they didn't have a location nearby, or it's a 2-hour, 3-hour trip. And it's really hard to travel with IBM. Be able to get off the toilet, to be able to sit in the car that long and drive. So we have to find look for a source of growing it to maybe instead of 150, maybe 200, and a bigger range, like she said, of from people at different stages. And maybe you can get more people to join and more excitement to join if we focus some of it on telling people more of, we've got this drug, we want to test it and see how it's doing. But us as patients, we want to know, not only is it going to cure or slow down the disease, but how's it going to help me today? How's it going to help me tomorrow? How's it going to help my functionality, or be able to improve my quality of life? So a lot of us are looking, yes, for a cure, but there's a really large amount of us just we want a study that helps us improve our quality of life. Even if it's just maybe the study is with the drug is, maybe we do one portion of the study on how does it help our grip, or how does it help our able to walk longer, or how to swallow or improve our swallowing. If you did a study focusing with a drug on a function to improve our quality of life, I think you'll see a lot of people with IBM grabbing for everything they can to join the study and finding a way to get there. Because a lot of us are dealing day to day with just trying to make it to the next hour or to the next day, or trying to figure out, this 32-ounce bottle of soda is now feels like it weighs 64 ounces in the evening, because as my unaffected muscles get tired, they can't support the affected muscles anymore. So we end up getting tired quicker. And so study-wise, the study that you just did, it had a tremendous amount of hope out there for a lot of people with IBM. I mean, you're the all-in study everybody's looking at and wanting to know the results of, and there's a lot of excitement. We want to know how to perform. And study after study, it's always been, it didn't work. Well, we need some success stories, no matter how small or many. And if we can say the study helped, a person that was in the study was able to swallow better, even though it was only 2 out of 100, that's a victory for us. Or we were able to maintain instead of decrease. That's a victory for us. And that's what we need from the medical field is finding a cure is all need. I mean, that's instrumental, but helping us helping us improve our ability to just function and giving us a seed of hope. No matter how small the success story is, you need to share the success. So we inspire people to want more. I want to join the study. I want to join the next study. Even though this one didn't form, we learned something. So the success of this study is we learn what the next stage may be for the next study. You know, we should be shouting the success of the study instead of it didn't work. Does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
surely does.
Yeah.
Thank you
We
very
need
much
hope.
to both of you. Joe, Merry Christine, my meanness has paid out because you gave us invaluable insights. So thank you very much to both of you.
Can I react on Joe?
Sure.
I agree with almost everything he said. There's a difference, I think, in Europe versus the United States. In the Netherlands, most IBM patients have to drive half an hour, mostly an hour, to get to an expertise center for IBM. The biggest problem we have, and I think that's worldwide, is the regulations about all privacy things and concerning the medicine. Like in Europe, in the Netherlands, we want to start the sirolimus research, but we cannot because of European regulations. And I know it's already started in America and Australia, I guess. I know that almost every IBM patients in the Netherlands called the neurologist, can I enter this research program? So everyone wants, but no one can get in because it's at the moment still not available. And so it's not only the research we have to look at, it's also, can we get research available for all over the world, because then we can get more patients to enter the research project and the results will be better. And it's hard to see that you work so hard to get results, and that like I watched Dr. Badishim working on the sirolimus and get everything organized, and it's just not working. And his time should be, and your time should go to the actual research and not to organize the thing. And that's for us hard to see in the Netherlands.
And I would like to put one other thing in is this group here is a fantastic group that's doing everything to help us improve our quality of life, find a cure and treatment. You are the guidance we need, because without you as a group, as an international group, showcasing what you're doing and trying and letting the world know is that is so important, because without it, everybody's looking towards herbs and stem cells and freezing and everything that they see on the website that I found a cure, or there's a cure at this country that no one's using. The people with IBM are so hungry to improve their quality of life. They're willing to try anything. And so it's important as you as a medical field, international field, is help keep us focused on what you're doing and shout out more, I guess, of what the community is doing, the medical community is doing, to keep us safe and in your minds, because there's too many of us trying to do the quick fix, and we need your guidance. But to get that, we need to know that something's being done from the medical field and that y'all are working together. So we need to spread, education out there to the world that we have this group, we have MIHRA, we have this organization. So that's my 2 cents, is shout out your victories and shout out your success, so everybody starts focusing on this group instead of false hope.
Thank you very much again to both of you. It's super, super valuable, your insights, and it surely gave me 1 or 2 things to think about. So who else wants to join the discussion? For I surely do. Pedro,
Yeah, I know.
do
I'll be
you-
happy to make a few comments. So hugely insightful comments, and all of them really important. So the difficulty is where to start, but maybe I made some notes. So dysphagia and drug administration. So that's a really important issue. In the case of Arimoclomol, patients were allowed to smash the tablets, and they could just put in a glass of water and drink the drug. So that was a possibility. But Marie-Christine, you're entirely correct that in some trials it's very difficult not to unblind the patient and the study team if you do that. And that is an issue with the ongoing sirolimus study, as you know, where if the patients are not able to swallow the tablets, they simply cannot participate in the study. And it's really important that study investigators are mindful of that when they set up the study and try to find alternatives if that is the case. So that's a great point. It was not an issue in this particular study because we could do that. And actually, even if a participant was PEG fed, so the tube feeding, they could administer the drug via the gastrostomy tube. Okay, so that was a possibility. But that's a great point. In terms of the population that we recruited and the disease duration, so actually that reflects an ongoing issue, which is the delay in diagnosis and the lack of awareness. What we see is that in average, the disease duration when the patients are diagnosed is around 5-6 years, because there's a huge deal, and you experienced it yourselves probably. And many patients are often misdiagnosed initially with another inflammatory myopathy or ALS or sometimes even orthopedic conditions. And this is a bit of a reflection of that. We didn't want to be too strict in the inclusion criteria. So, because we could say, well, you need to have a certain degree of mobility or very early diagnosis in order to participate, but then we'll be excluding a lot of patients, and we didn't want to do that either. So we did have a kind of a physical performance cutoff, which was the ability to perform a test called the 6-minute, the time up and go test. So essentially, patients needed to be able to rise from a chair. They could use their arms, but they needed to be able to do that and then walk back and forth. But we wanted to be also at the same time a bit inclusive, so not too restrictive, and so that's the kind of the explanation about the population we ended up with. But it's important to take those factors into account, because if the disease is too advanced, then it becomes less likely that you're able to demonstrate a response to the drug, right? So all those factors need to be taken into account. In terms of the number of patients, it was a big study, but actually we got the patients that we needed, because the way we calculated the sample size based on data that we knew about the IBM FRS, 150 should be enough to show an effect of the drug if the drug worked, right? And clearly it didn't. And I have to say that this patient community is just amazing. We didn't have any problems recruiting participants, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help us in research. It's the most amazing, generous patient population I've worked with, and it's just a real pleasure to work with these patients. So we didn't have any issues recruiting, and I think if we needed 200 or 250 patients, we would have managed to get that population. And this brings me to probably one of the biggest hurdles. You mentioned it, Marie-Christine, it's all the regulatory issues. And you mentioned the sirolimus study and the huge difficulties that we're having in bringing that study to Europe. And I'm also trying to bring it to the UK. I haven't been able yet. So I'm also experienced those hurdles. And that's that's something that we as a community, I think, also need to tackle. Okay, maybe for now, I've spoken a lot. I want other people to speak as well, but yeah.
I just wanted to make one comment regarding rising out of a chair. It's hard to come up with restrictions or policies or what corresponds to be able to join the study. But what the getting out of the chair did, I went to one of the myositis conferences in the US, and everybody in the room wanted to join the trial. But what's amazing is all the really tall people couldn't join because I'm 5'4" and I can get out of a chair. A 6'4" person can't get out of that same chair. So you wouldn't believe how many tall people trying to figure out how to get out of a chair. They were taking their shoes off. They're putting their feet in different directions. They were trying to push up with their hands. They were leaning their weight forward, trying to use their body weight to get them out of the chair. And it's a different world for a 5'4" person to get out of that chair as it is a tall person to get out of the chair. So maybe that's something you might look at the next
Yeah, so that's
study.
really insightful. That is really insightful, and I think you're right. Probably we need to work more with patients as well, and refine these criteria. It's not easy anyway. In any case, it's not easy to find the right way of measuring functionality and define cutoffs, but that's really insightful actually. That's why we need you to work with us when elaborating these criteria.
I have a question for Pedro. So I'm going to put you on the spot. So Pedro, what do you think about the outcome, like the primary outcome measure, the IBM function rating scale? Because we talked about how there is one part of it that's focusing on swallowing problems. But ADLs and upper extremity, lower extremity strength, they're given more sort of weight. But we're also talking about how dysphagia can be very important, and what matters to the physician is a lot of times is very different than what matters to our patients. And also, a lot of our patients in real life, they present with dysphagia several years before. So they go from ENT to GI. Then in the end, when they start developing finger flexor weakness or quadriceps weakness, then they find us. But at that time, when we include them into studies, it might be maybe too late. So do you think the IBM functional rating scale is a good outcome measure to evaluate dysphagia from this angle? And is it because of it's just one measure, so it's from 0 to 4? So if there is some improvement in dysphagia, it's not going to be reflected a lot on the total score. Do you think we need maybe like a revised functional rating scale? And are there any initiatives for developing such an outcome measure?
Yeah, so excellent question, and there's various aspects that need to be tackled in that question, I guess. You're completely right. The IBM FRS is heavily weighted on lower limb and upper limb function, and dysphagia is 1 out of 10 questions. So if you ask me, is it a good scale or is it the most appropriate scale to assess dysphagia? No, I don't think so, because it's only 1 question rated from 0 to 4, and I don't think it's sensitive enough, especially if an intervention is only as a minor effect, like let's say, could still be an important effect and a clinically significant one, but it might not be captured because of the sensitivity of the scale. I think if it's a study really trying to address dysphagia, we need other tools, and but some work still needs to be done in terms of validating and showing the sensitivity of those tools. We're doing some of that work, and there's also already now a few papers showing that some scales that have been used in other conditions, they're performing well. And so there's already a small list of, I think, very good scales that could be used in future studies specifically addressing dysphagia. Now, when we design a trial, however, we also need to think about regulatory bodies. And ultimately, our aim is to show that the drug works somehow, and that the regulatory bodies will accept the outcome of the trial, and we'll agree that the outcome measures that were used, especially the primary endpoint, is adequate, and then that they keep marketing authorization based on the results of the study. And in having said that, the IBM FRS at the moment is the best validated scale in inclusion body myositis. So that's why I think it makes sense to use the IBM FRS as the primary endpoint, even though obviously it relies heavily on upper and lower limb function. So yes, I think it's the best validated scale at the moment in inclusion body myositis. I think it does capture a lot of the relevant symptoms and impairments that patients suffer, and we've done some qualitative research about that, asking patients about what they feel about the scale, if it captures what their impairment. So there's good evidence to show that. So at the moment, I think it is the best primary endpoint that we can be used, but it has limitations. And one of the big limitations, as you outline, is the swallowing. I don't think if it's a study really trying to demonstrate or test an efficacy of an intervention in terms of swallowing, then I don't think it's the most appropriate outcome for that.
Can I say something? Because sure, your question was discussed at the ANMC workshop from IBM 1.5 years ago with the IBM FRS function scale. And Pedro, we discussed it, but it didn't change anything at that moment, I guess. But for me as a patient, I first started to lose my leg function and then hand function, and now I have big problems with swallowing. And I think the swallowing is the most social isolating aspect of the disease. And I find the most difficult to handle. Because it's difficult to go to a restaurant, it's difficult to go to friends, and so it's one of the hardest parts of the disease, I guess. So it needs loads of attention.
Yeah, and I think it's been neglected for quite a long time, and you're right. One of the things that we discussed at that meeting is that we need to focus more on dysphagia, and ourselves, my research group is trying to do that as well, but I think it needs to be tackled in a slightly different way, because I don't think it progresses in the same way as the upper and lower limb function. I think there's often a dissociation between the two, and I think we need, if we're going to look at dysphagia in detail, I think we need specific studies really just looking at dysphagia. I think Leslie has her hand raised for a while, so maybe Leslie.
Well, yes, thank you. This is just so brilliant. This exemplifies why it's so important to include patients from the ground up with such remarkable insight into how we do our science. And I have a question, and I also have a comment. And I guess I was wondering, Pedro, do you remember how disease duration was defined? In scleroderma, which is also an inflammatory and fibrosing disease, we try to harken back a patient's memory to the first symptoms that can clearly be defined as being related to scleroderma, as opposed to when someone finally gets into care with somebody who can recognize the disease, which can be a 7-year, 12-year difference at some point. So I was just wondering about that. And then the other thing that I was going to say is that I think that the IBM FRS is really, it was such a brilliantly designed functional scale, because it really, and it probably saved the study because it was the primary endpoint during COVID. But the way it was developed, because it relied on patient report of their symptoms and their function, right? As opposed to patients, the primary endpoint being something like that involved an assessor, a hands-on assessment. So that's really quite remarkable. But the qualitative studies that were done for the development of the IBM FRS was really wonderful. What we are missing, though, is an understanding of patient experience in IBM and preferences. And the more we talk, and this is what I wanted to say, because I wanted to sort of like go to reflect back on what Joe was saying about, that we're a community together, and the patient community is relying on the scientific community. The scientific community is relying on the patient community and this communion. And so as such, I would like to say that, MIHRA has applied for funding to investigate patient experience in IBM globally, to understand preferences and importance. So that's all I'm going to say, and I want to hear what Pedro's answer and responses and all of it.
Yeah, well, first question, you're absolutely right. There needs to be a distinction between true disease duration, which to me, like I think to you, is symptom duration. So essentially, we try to understand when was the first time that the patient felt that there was something wrong with their muscles. Let's say they started getting weak. There's always a little bit of recall bias, and it's always a bit subjective, but it's, yeah, so the way we define it is really symptom duration. When was the first times that they think they started having symptoms related to this condition? And that's, I think, the most appropriate way to define it. And then regarding the second point, I won't make a lot of comments. I completely agree. And I'm very happy that MIHRA is planning to do some of this work. Well, if we get the funding, but even if we don't get it, we'll try to find it somewhere else.
What if MIHRA took a look at another function or another IBM scaling, but from a medical side for your studies on top of the current scale that's out there, like measuring the swallowing gait, the swallowing trigger, I'm sorry, where we as a patient can't tell whether a swallowing trigger is a 2-second or a 1 second, but when you have a swallowing test done, your doctor, the test itself says maybe it's at 2 seconds, and that puts you as a high choke risk. But if you're at 1 second, you're not at a high choke risk. But if you use that as a part of your scale for the medical side that we don't understand or see ourselves, that way you can use that for your study. Are we really improving or not, or is it maintaining?
So maybe I can answer that. So very, very good point. And that work is being done by various groups. We're doing it as well. So for example, we're looking at video fluoroscopy, which is like an X-ray of the person swallowing. And we're using video fluoroscopies to make multiple measurements, and then trying to use those measurements as an outcome measure that could be used for future clinical trials. We're also trying to use MRI of the muscles of the neck the so-called bulbar muscles, and to look at changes in those muscles over time. And we're using various types of questionnaires that assess swallowing function, again, to see how well they capture swallowing function and changes over time in swallowing function. And for example, Jens Smith in Germany, he used something called real-time MRI, which is a kind of video fluoroscopy, but using MRI. So you're absolutely right, Joe. This is needed. But fortunately, we and other groups are trying to address the issue and finding these tools to better assess dysphagia.
Pedro, we still have around 2 minutes. I would like to ask, do you think now, with the results in hand, that the preclinical data was accurate? Do you think that the mouse models really represent the disease in humans? Can we use them to better understand, or have we go in some other direction?
So, well, the preclinical data was correct. The thing is, we should bear in mind that most clinical trials in medicine are negative, right? And there's even a publication bias that many of the clinical trials that are negative are not even published. So it's even the mismatch is even bigger than what we think. So that's the first point. And no matter how good the animal model is, it's an animal. It's not humans. So even though you can have great results in a cell model or animal model, you can always get very different results with real life human beings. Added to that, there was the fact that the animal model that we used, I think it was the best animal model for IBM at that point in time, but it's not a great model. And it's not a great model because it's actually the mice that we use, they have a mutation in a gene called the velocine-containing protein gene. And mutations in that gene, they also cause disease in humans, and they cause a disease that affects the brain with frontotemporal dementia, the bone with Paget's disease of the bone, and the muscle with an inclusion body myopathy. And now these histological findings, they're very similar to the histological findings of people with IBM. And that's why we use that model, because there was no better model available. But if you ask me, is it the ideal model? Definitely not, because it's a genetic condition in a mouse, and the disease is a sporadic disease in a human being. But this was like I don't know, almost 10 years ago when we start doing the mouse work, right? Now there are better models, and if it was now, I would have used a different model. But it was what we had available at that point in time, and that's how science works. You evolve, you become better, you learn more things, and you try to do things better the next time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for all you do internationally to help us as patients live better quality lives. Keep doing what you're doing, but please shout out your victories and keep feeding us hope.
Yes, please do.
Could I ask a question here about shouting out victories? How would you like to see that? You mentioned it a little bit, but would that be like another paper, kind of defining what we learned? Or would that be, for example, maybe interviewing some patients who participated in the study and their experience? Or what would that look like to you?
Well, to me, it would be in every study, you've got, some who struggled, but some who beat the curve. They're on the higher end of the curve of the study. Well, share some of the higher end study, share the ones that did well in the study, and maybe look back into their environment and what their support system is like, and maybe take a look at what you're doing with the medication and the trials and your in your forecast and see why did these 2 or 3 people do better than the other 145? Why did these 5 people do better? And maybe we can learn something from those 5. Is it, is it a combination of their mindset with the drug working together? Or was it, I mean, how involved were they in the process? Were they really focused? Or did they I took the drug, there's nothing else to do? I mean, what else did they do with the drug? Because maybe it's a combination of things that'll help the drug succeed. Just not the drug itself. Maybe it's a little bit of both, because the mind's a very powerful thing, and when you combine it with the medical side, there's amazing things that can happen. We just need success stories, and I mean, 5 success stories out of 150. Well, those 5 people would give so much hope to the rest of everybody, or the people that really think it helped them. Let them tell their story, why they thought that it helped them. Say, hey, maybe on the numbers doesn't show it, but it helped me. So it helped, 5% of the people. Well, that 5% of people gives enough people hope to move on.
Yeah. Leslie, I think it's maybe in the Netherlands, I don't, maybe it's starting very simple. In the Netherlands, most of the general practitioners from an IBM patient don't know the disease. So your physio doesn't know the disease. You have to explain everything to everyone. And as a patient, you feel alone. And it's very hard to be aware of that there is any research on the disease. So I think the first step is to let patients know that there are different kinds of research projects and that you are working very hard as a group. And maybe that's something patient organizations in different countries have to share that information more. For my foundation, it's very hard to get to know all the IBM patients in the Netherlands, also due to regulations on privacy. So if we know as patients that you working as hard as you are doing, it's comforting. It's that's the first step. And I think that's very important. Also, of course, if there are results and what the results are. But at the moment, I think most of the patients don't even know that there is such an amount of people working hard on the solution of IBM.
Yeah. So I know we're over time, but maybe I'll share something that has happened recently to me. And so I received an email recently from the owner of a care facility for the elderly, and it was kind of a random email with a list of questions about IBM, and this is because he had someone there with IBM that recently joined the care facility, and obviously I replied to all the questions, and then after a few days he sent me an email and saying that the service user wanted him to pass on to me, and I'll read it. Her heartfelt thanks for my responses. She wanted me to say that she felt really heard, certainly more than she ever did before regarding her condition, and she learned so much more about it. And I think that's the reality. There's so much lack of awareness. I'm sure that this lady tried to find answers in the past and she couldn't get them from nobody. And this was a beautiful email to me, and it's so rewarding to read this type of email. So
one last thing, a lot of people think we're wanting a cure or treatment, something to improve. We as IBM patients, if we can maintain, that's a win. And it's too many times we're thinking the win is an improvement. A win for us is maintaining.
I think Sumaya has her hands up.
Yeah, hello. Hi, everyone. So I'm sorry, my video is not functioning right now. My name is Dr. Sumaya Shah, and I'm a rheumatologist working currently in Pakistan. So I was wondering how, I just wanted to ask Pedro how, any advice or tips, because we have such limited resources and our patients, the same, I would agree that they don't, the doctors and the patients, both of them, they have very limited resources and limited knowledge on the disease. And especially with IBM, where your treatment modalities are so limited. So what to do if you don't have sirolimus or you don't have acromegaol available, and you have only a very handful of options? And to be honest, physiotherapy is the major one. So what do you do in this situation? Like any tips or advices? Like,
Yeah,
that would be
so
really
good
nice.
question. So although there's no drug pharmacological intervention that has proven to be effective in IBM, there's still a lot to do to help our patients. And that obviously includes physiotherapy, exercise advice, falls prevention, orthotics, occupational health. There's a lot of adaptations that can be done to improve the quality of life and their independence at home and outdoors. Swallowing is a really important issue. Make sure you ask about the swallowing, how it's progressing, in order to avoid future infections and aspiration pneumonia. And there are also interventions that we can try to improve the swallowing. Nutrition, be mindful of the nutritional status of what they're eating. So all these components are really important to tackle. It's not only about giving drugs, it's about thinking about all these issues and try to help with all these issues, because at least we're doing something to try to improve the quality of life, their function, their independence, even though we're not able to stop the deterioration and stop the disease. We're trying to improve their lives.
So Maya, that's a really important point too, because I think this upcoming seminar, which is going to be a 2-hour seminar trying to give an overview of a holistic overview on functional and quality of life issues, is mostly going to highlight some of the array of what Pedro was just talking about from different perspectives. So I hope you can join. I think it's going to be about 6 p.m. in Pakistan when that seminar happens. And I put the link in the chat, and hopefully we'll get lots of global involvement. We have a lot of people signed up right now, but it will be nice.
Yes, hopefully. Even this has been so knowledgeable. I joined in the middle, but it's really been knowledgeable. Thank you so much for adding me into the group.
Yeah, I think exercise is also medicine. We have to also emphasize that. And now we're developing an app, UT, and with the help of Rice University, with their computer science students, an exercise and myositis app. So again, I wanna tell our patients we're working hard, and the initial phase will probably launch somewhere in April, because there are a lot of apps, but they're usually you have to pay for them. But this is going to be focusing on neuromuscular diseases, and especially we're going to start with myositis. And Dr. Alexanderson from the Karolinska Institute, I'm sure a lot of you know her. She's the guru in exercise in IBM and myositis. So she's also helping us. So, and hopefully for our patients worldwide in Pakistan or in other countries, this will also be helpful because it's going to be a free app, and it's going to be focused on exercises in in neuromuscular disorders, especially myositis. But I want to emphasize exercise is medicine, and I've seen really amazing outcomes. And like Joe also said, he's doing better than how he was when he was diagnosed. And I know from his social media that he's also very active in exercise. So I just wanted to plug that in.
Super interesting. Sure. Please let us
Oh.
know when it's available, the app. We want it here in Argentina.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And I will just say that a number of Joe's trainings are on the MIHRA website. If you look under community, the community tab, community news, you'll see a page dedicated to Myositis Joe, where he goes through with Ashley Dalby, who is his trainer, through various exercise types to increase various aspects of functionality. And so that's also available on the web. Joe, did you want to say anything more about that?
I'm not her only success story. She's been working with 4 other IBM persons one-on-one, and all of us are doing a lot better with the power of movement as a treatment for our disease. And she focuses, and what's interesting is all 5 of us are on completely different exercise programs, nothing alike, because she does a muscle assessment on us, a physical assessment on us, and it's based off where we are in our phase of our IBM, and she designs a program to an individual. In other words, there's not an exercise program for IBM. There's an exercise program for her based off her movement assessment, her assessment on your ability to make movements, and she does it off that. But she teaches at the University of Texas at Tyler, and I've been under her guidance for 5 years, and tremendous amount of work. And there's even one shout out, one patient that joined 2 years ago. Her name was Betty, but she couldn't step up on a curb, and today she's walking up 2 flights of stairs. But what Ashley had to do was take the fear of climbing up a 7-inch step away from her before she can move on. So a lot of it's mental too, and who you surround yourself with.
Well, we are on time, so I think, Leslie, if there are no other comments, we can call it a day.
Thank you. Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you all next time.
Everyone,
See you.
thank you for the
Bye-bye.
wonderful insight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Leslie.
so much.
Thank you for this wonderful time.
Leslie, I just wanted to say that it's so important that this the patient feedback that I saw today, and it's giving me so much motivation and encouragement to actually start something like this, a patient group in our setting also. It's so important to get patient feedback, and then encouraging them and including exercise, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you're doing. So thank you so much for making me a part of it.
We're so glad you're here. That's what it's all about, connection. Like, we're nothing without connection. Like, we can't science without connection. We can't really care for patient without, this collective voice of understanding. So, I'm so glad that you've joined Somaya, and there's other people that do other groups, and it's be great to put everybody together.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Hopefully in the coming month, I think a lot of people are going to join in, hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. You know how to get in touch with me.
Yes. Thank you so much. Lovely.
Bye.
Everything was lovely. Bye.
Bye. Good to see you. Bye, Nicholas. Bye, Malati. Bye-bye.